My name is Daniel, and I'm 32 years old. Looking back, I realize that moment the last time I said I'm sorry marked a turning point in my life. It was late afternoon, and the sunlight was soft, almost gentle, but inside me there was a storm. I sat across from her at the small kitchen table, where so many of our memories had been made. The smell of old coffee mixed with the faint scent of her lavender perfume. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. I wanted to say sorry, but I wasn't sure if it was enough. Would those words fix what was broken, or were they just the last thread before everything unraveled? My heart pounded in my chest, and I found myself searching her face for a sign, anything that would tell me if forgiveness was still possible. She looked tired, like the weight of the past months had pressed down on her shoulders, making her small and fragile. Her eyes didn't meet mine at first, but when they did, there was a strange mix of sadness and distance, like she was already somewhere far away. I took a deep breath. "I'm sorry," I said, softly, barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for all the pain I caused, for the times I wasn't there, for the mistakes I made." She nodded slowly, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of relief in her eyes. But then her voice came out quiet but firm. "Thank you for saying that. But sometimes sorry isn't enough." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I realized this was more than an apology, it was a goodbye in disguise. We both knew things would never be the same. The apology was a last chance, a final moment of honesty before we let go of what we once had. We didn't say much more after that. The silence between us was full of things left unsaid, regrets, hopes, fears. But in that quiet, I understood something important. Forgiveness isn't always about fixing what's broken. Sometimes it's about accepting change and learning to move forward. I looked at her one last time and saw not just the woman I loved, but also a person who deserved peace, whether with me or without me. And in that moment I promised myself to carry that lesson with me, to be kinder, to be more present, and to remember that even when things end there is still meaning in what was. That day, the last time I said, "I'm sorry," I learned that some apologies are endings, but they can also be beginnings. And from that quiet moment I started a new chapter, not just in my life, but in how I understood love loss and forgiveness. The words I couldn't take back. After I said I'm sorry, the room felt heavier, like the air itself had thickened with meaning. Those two words carried all the pain, regret, and hope that I had bottled up inside me for so long. I wanted her to know I truly meant them, that I wished I could rewind time and do things differently. She looked at me, her eyes steady and calm. "Why now?" she asked softly. I swallowed hard, trying to find the right answer. "Because I can't keep pretending everything is okay. I need to be honest with you and with myself." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Honesty is good, but sometimes honesty hurts more than silence." I nodded. I understood that better than anyone. My mistakes weren't small, they had cut deep into the trust between us. I had taken her for granted, ignored her feelings, and made choices that hurt both of us. Saying sorry didn't erase those moments. It couldn't. "I know I hurt you," I said, voice cracking. "And I'm sorry for that. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. All I can do is try to be better from now on." She looked away, her hands folding tightly in her lap. The silence stretched between us filled with the weight of what we both felt but didn't say. Then she spoke, her voice steady but kind. "Sometimes people change, but the past stays. Forgiveness isn't easy, and sometimes it takes more than words to heal." Those words stung, but they were true. Forgiveness isn't a simple yes or no. It's a slow process, a decision that can take time, sometimes years. It isn't just about forgetting. It's about understanding, accepting, and learning to move on. "I hope one day you can forgive me," I said quietly. "Not because I deserve it, but because you deserve peace." She looked back at me, then eyes softening. I want that too, for both of us. In that moment, I realized the apology was not just about me. It was about her healing, and our shared past. It wasn't about fixing what was broken, but about honoring what we had, even if it had to end. Our last conversation wasn't filled with anger or blame, but with a bittersweet tenderness, like two people saying goodbye while holding on to the good memories that still mattered. Before I left that day, she reached out and touched my hand lightly. "Thank you for your words. They mean something." I smiled, even though my heart ached. "Thank you for listening." That was the last time I said I'm sorry. And though it was painful, it was honest and real, a moment where I faced my mistakes and took responsibility even when it was hard. Sometimes, the hardest apologies are the most important. They teach us about courage, humility, and the power of love, especially when love means letting go. The silent space after the last words were spoken, a silence settled between us. A silence so heavy it seemed to fill every corner of the room. It wasn't the quiet comfort of shared peace, but the tense stillness of something fragile slipping away. I felt it deep inside, like the final breath before a storm breaks. She looked down, and I could see her hands trembling slightly. I wanted to reach out to say something that would make it all better, but nothing came. Instead, I sat still, feeling the weight of my own regret pressing down on my chest. In that silence, I saw everything we had lost, not just the good times, but the moments where I had failed her, where I wasn't strong enough or kind enough. Those memories hovered between us like ghosts, reminding me of how far we had drifted. I thought about all the times I wanted to apologize but didn't. All the chances I missed to say I'm sorry before things became so broken. Now that last apology was like a door closing a farewell wrapped in words that could not change the past. She finally looked up, her eyes meeting mine with a sadness I couldn't escape. "I need time," she said softly. "Time to heal, to find peace without you." Her voice was steady but fragile, like a small flame fighting against the wind. I nodded, understanding that this silence was not emptiness but a space for healing, though it felt like a wound that would take a long time to close. I wanted to promise her I would wait, that I would do whatever it took to make things right. But deep down, I knew some things can't be fixed, not with apologies, not with promises. Some changes are permanent, and sometimes love means letting go. As I stood to leave, the quiet lingered wrapping around me like a shadow. The house felt colder, emptier. I felt a deep ache, but also a strange kind of relief, because honesty had finally broken through the silence. Walking away that day, I realized the silent space after an apology is where real growth begins. It's a time for reflection, acceptance, and sometimes the hardest part of love, the goodbye. Though the silence was painful, it taught me that forgiveness isn't always a gift given in words. Sometimes it's a quiet understanding that life moves forward even when hearts carry scars. I didn't know then how long the healing would take or what the future held. But I knew I had to face that silence alone to learn from it, and to find peace in the spaces between words. Because sometimes the most important things in life aren't said, they're felt. And in that quiet, I found the first step toward healing myself, facing the change alone. The days after that final apology were some of the hardest I have ever lived through. The house felt emptier, colder, like the warmth we once shared had been swept away by a sudden winter. I faced the change alone, carrying the weight of loss and the heavy lessons that come with it. At first, I wanted to blame myself. I kept replaying every mistake, every moment I had failed to be the person she needed. If only I had said sorry sooner, I thought. If only I had been different. But blaming never healed anything. It only deepened the ache in my chest. Instead, I began to understand that change is part of life, sometimes painful, but necessary. Holding on to the past only stops us from growing. Forgiveness starts with acceptance, not just forgiving others, but forgiving ourselves for being human and imperfect. I spent many quiet evenings alone, thinking about what she had said. Sometimes people change, but the past stays. Those words echoed in my mind like a truth I couldn't escape. I realized that even though the past could not be changed, my future still waited unwritten and full of possibilities. One night I wrote in my journal, "I am learning to let go, not because I want to forget, but because I want to heal." I am learning that growth often comes from loss. It wasn't easy. There were days filled with loneliness, sadness, and regret. But slowly, I found strength in small things, the smile of a stranger, the warmth of sunlight on my face, the quiet moments of peace that broke through the storm inside me. I reached out to friends I had neglected, started taking care of myself in ways I hadn't before. I learned that healing is not a race, it's a journey. And on that journey, every step matters. I also discovered that forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. It frees us from carrying the heavy burden of anger and pain. When I finally forgave myself for my mistakes, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, opening space for hope and new beginnings. Though the change was hard, it taught me valuable lessons about love loss and the power of growth. I understood that sometimes saying "I'm sorry" is not the end, but the start of a new path. A path where we learn to be kinder to ourselves and others. And even if the people we love are no longer by our side, the lessons they leave behind can guide us through the darkness toward the light. That is how I face the change alone, not as a defeat but as an opportunity to become a better version of myself, to carry the past with respect, but not let it define me. Because life is not about never falling. It's about rising every time we do. Finding peace in small things. After all the pain and the long nights of doubt, I began to see something new. A quiet peace found not in grand gestures or dramatic changes, but in the simple moments of everyday life. I realized that importance isn't about doing something huge or being perfect. It's about showing up caring and finding meaning in the small things. One morning, I was sitting on a park bench watching the sunlight dance through the leaves. A little girl ran past me laughing, her joy so pure it made me smile without thinking. In that moment, I understood life's value isn't measured by fame or success, but by moments like this, moments filled with kindness, connection, and love. I started to pay more attention to the little things, the warmth of a cup of tea, the sound of birds singing, the simple act of saying, "Thank you," or "I'm here." These small acts build the foundation of meaning more than any big accomplishment ever could. I also learned that everyone has value. Even in our mistakes and struggles, there is a light inside us waiting to shine. We don't need to do something extraordinary to be important. Being present, being kind, and being true to ourselves is enough. One day, I wrote a letter to her, not to send, but to remind myself, "You mattered. I mattered, we mattered, and that is enough." Life isn't perfect, and love doesn't always last forever. But that doesn't mean it wasn't real, or that it didn't teach us something deep and important. The last time I said "I'm sorry," I lost something precious, but I also gained something even more valuable, a deeper understanding of myself and of life's simple truths. So, if you ever feel small or unimportant, remember this: your life matters just as it is. You don't need to do big things to be meaningful. Your kindness, your love, your presence, all of it adds light to the world, and that is a beautiful thing.